Then we get to the Fallout games. In 2015, we got Fallout 4. I have a lot of things I want to say about it, though I'm going to save that for a future video.
Many months later.
Hello and welcome. This is Faceless Opinion, Surviving the Wasteland. Welcome you back to another video. Fallout 4. This is a game I've been wanting to talk about since Skyrim month. As I said in that video, I have many things I want to say about this one. One thing that I often hear from people who have played Fallout 4 is that it is not as good as Fallout 3 or New Vegas. For me, I cannot really weigh in on that stand since I haven't played either of those two games. My first Fallout game was Fallout 4. Take that for what you will. Now, since I don't have this pre-exposed experience to the other Fallout games, meaning that I'm not going to be judging Fallout 4 as a Fallout game, but as a standalone title. So, I am not going to be comparing Fallout 4 to its predecessors. When it comes to my personal experience with this game, I was mainly disinterested with it. I did not feel motivated to want to play it, and honestly, I stopped playing for like a year and a half. And it was not like I was busy and didn't have time to play, I was just not invested with it. I only ended up picking it up and playing it again when I didn't have any other games to play. Now, what was it that made me tune out of it? Was it the gameplay? No, I like the gameplay quite a lot. For me, it stems from the plot. Yeah, this would have to be where my biggest grievances come from. I did not enjoy the main story whatsoever, so much so that I ended up doing every other side quest I could manage way before I ended up completing the main story, to give you an idea how I feel about it. Now, what is it about the story that I did not like? The Soul Survivor's origin and motivation. I cannot emphasize this enough. I do not care that the Soul Survivor's spouse got murdered and infant son gets abducted, because I do not have a connection to either of them. I have not had any time to get to know them, to feel connected to them, to where I want to avenge my wife's death and to find my son. I don't feel anything. Now, I know that due to time constraints, that wasn't really a possibility to establish a proper relationship with them, but I can name at least 2 games in which where a family member of the main character dies in the beginning of the game, kickstarting the plot where it is done properly, and you feel for that character. Those games are Assassin's Creed 2 and The First Last of Us. In those instances, Ezio's brothers and father and Joel's daughter were treated like actual people, unlike Nora and Sean. Those two are plot points. MacGuffins, really, so that the plot can happen. Another thing that I feel is worth mentioning along with this would have to be that it kinda hinders role-playing to an extent. What I mean by that is Fallout 4 is an action role-playing game, and the thing with role-playing games is that the players get a lot of creative freedom to imagine what type of character they want to be. Like in Skyrim, for example, you start off as a prisoner who has no established past, meaning you are a blank slate, being able to determine what your past could have been and choosing what type of character you're going to be. You get 100% creative freedom. That isn't the case in Fallout 4. The Soul Survivor is tethered to a spouse and a child, and the plot is therefore connected to it, and as a result, does not give you that sense of freedom, which can be off-putting since everything you do has to pertain to your family. Don't get me started on all the coincidences that happen to get the plot to move forward, like you being unfrozen long enough to witness Kellogg kill your spouse and taking Sean. Honestly, they had no logistical reason to defrost you. Only happened so that the plot can take place. Or the fact that Codsworth, your robot butler, not only survived the nukes going off, but was able to stay operational for 200 years at your old house at Sanctuary Hills. Don't get me wrong, I love Codsworth, one of my favorite characters, but you have to admit that's a bit far-fetched. And keep in mind, all of the issues I just mentioned take place at the very beginning of the game. I haven't even talked about what happens later, which segues me to my next point. One thing that you can do in the game is interact with some factions that you come across while wandering the Commonwealth. These factions are the Minutemen, the Brotherhood of Steel, the Railroad, and the Institute, all of which play a role within the main story. How so? Allow me to explain. The Institute serves as the antagonist of the game, for at least the first half, since it is revealed that Sean was abducted by them, and you have to rescue him, leading to many confrontations in discovering that they have been known to abduct people and replace them with android lookalikes known as synths. However, when you get to the Institute, it is revealed that Sean is all grown up and is the big daddy boss man of the Institute, which leads to the second half of the game, which I will talk about a little later. The Brotherhood of Steel is a paramilitary organization who likes to search for pre-war technology and view the Institute and their synths as immoral and need to be eradicated. The Railroad is a clandestine group whose mission is to help runaway synths who no longer want to serve their Institute masters, which serves as a reference to the Underground Railroad. Then we get to the Minutemen, who go around helping the citizens of the Commonwealth and protecting them from raiders, supermutants, gunners, synths, deathclaws, etc., etc. Now, let's loop back to where I mentioned Sean was the leader of the Institute. It is here where the story begins to branch off. There are two paths you can choose. You can either choose to work with the Institute or to choose to go against it. With the first option, you work alongside Sean, working to benefit the Institute by finding synths, working on their projects, and by eliminating the Brotherhood and Railroad. Though throughout that questline, it is revealed that Sean is dying of cancer, and upon his death, he anoints the sole survivor as the new director of the Institute. If you choose to go against the Institute, you will either work alongside the Railroad, Brotherhood, or Minutemen to take them down, each one having their own way of doing so. The Brotherhood of Steel rebuilds Liberty Prime to completely destroy the Institute. The Railroad has you serve as a double agent within the Institute to understand their layout, start extracting the synths, and then destroy the organization. And both of those factions will destroy one another before they go after the Institute. While for the Minutemen, if you choose to work with them, initially neutral, they will join in as well, though their stuff pertaining to the main story is not as interesting as the rest, and kind of considered to be the one that the majority of people won't end up siding with them. So with these three options, you will be given a child synth of Sean, and that is how it all ends, with each of those factions watching the Institute blow up. To be frank, I do not like any of the factions in the game. I think they are all crap in their own special way. I think I will start with the Institute first. When it comes to the swerve with Sean being the director and tries to convince you to work with them, I did not enjoy that. They were trying to highlight the group who have been the antagonists of the story for the most part as this group who is misunderstood. Yeah, no, that's not flying with me. They have literally gone around abducting random people from across the Commonwealth, replaced them with synths, and using them to spy on people, and killed the original. Also factor in that they killed your spouse and kidnapped Sean at the very start of the game. You are not really doing a good job of convincing me to work alongside them. The Institute is not some misunderstood group who's trying to do the right thing. They are malicious. The sheer number of the screwed up things they have done makes them come off as hypocrites when they say they want to preserve humanity and all of their experiments are in line with that goal. Bullshit. They are the villains of the game, and you are not changing my mind on that. Also, by the way, they give you who I consider to be one of the worst companions in the game, that being X688, Bomb 3, without any shadow of a doubt. Next up on the list would be the Brotherhood of Steel. My big issues with them would have to be that I don't trust them, and I don't like their rhetoric. When it comes to the lack of trust, think of it like this. You are an average person in the wasteland minding your own business. Then all of a sudden you see a giant militarized Zeppelin fly over, being accompanied by other aircraft and blaring things like, "People of the Commonwealth, do not interfere. Our intentions are peaceful. We are the Brotherhood of Steel." Yeah, that's reassuring. Watching an entire invasion force just appear out of nowhere. Now, I will not compare the Brotherhood with the Institute when it comes to their ideals of benefiting mankind, because that would be extremely disingenuous. The Brotherhood does a far superior job of displaying that than the Institute, but that doesn't make them much better. Honestly, they just seem just as self-serving as the Institute. I mean, you don't see the Brotherhood going to Diamond City trying to teach them about their mission statement, trying to recruit people. They aren't trying to ease the Commonwealth to their cause. Instead, they just turn the Boston airport into a fortress and go around looking for technology that will benefit them in their military operations. They are just as reclusive as the Institute. Now, when it comes to their rhetoric, simply put, it's discriminatory. They hate anything that is not human. Ghouls, supermutants, synths, they hate all those. Granted that those three are quite dangerous and can pose threats to human settlements, I can understand why they view them as vermin. However, there are a large number of outliers to where that is not the case, and in fact that they can live side by side without conflict, like non-feral ghouls, synths who escape the Institute, supermutants who don't have the drive to kill and eat humans, but in the eyes of the Brotherhood, they are threats that need to be eliminated. Meaning people like Hancock, Strong, Curie, who ends up acquiring a synth body, Nick Valentine, maybe on that one. Hell, even one of their own, Paladin Dance, are all on the chopping block. Especially Paladin Dance. That man was loyal to the cause, imbibed all the principles of being a member of the Brotherhood of Steel, doing mission after mission for their benefit. The second it was revealed that he was a synth, he becomes persona non grata and Elder Maxon orders his execution. And you have to be the one to old yeller him. Now, yes, I know that you can do a speech check to try and spare Dance. That's not the issue. The issue is that the Brotherhood instantly turns against Dance. Doesn't give him a chance to defend himself or plead his case, meaning that everything he did for the Brotherhood, every mission he completed on their behalf, means absolutely nothing to them, since he was a synth, something he didn't even know about. I can't emphasize this enough. Elder Maxon, go fuck yourself. Bunch of idiots. Though, not for that reason. I would say the stupidest thing they did was not trying to salvage any of the Institute's technology before destroying it. Isn't the Brotherhood's whole thing trying to find technology and collect it? And objectively speaking, the Institute's tech is more advanced than the Brotherhood's. For example, they have teleportation technology, robotics, cybernetics, advanced research when it comes to agriculture. Hell, they even made synthetic gorillas. Honestly, if the Institute remade Harambe, I would forgive all their sins and declare them the greatest faction in the game right now. All jokes aside, did the Brotherhood not really deem any of that worth collecting? Bloody hell, the Brotherhood recruited Masson Lee to help rebuild Liberty Prime, who is God tier by the way, and is the best thing the Brotherhood has, but said screw it to anything else? I could think of a few things they can make use of. Maybe give Proctor Ingram some actual legs and not have her moving around the compact Prudwin in power armor, killing off their entire fusion core supply, which is already low to begin with because of all the power armor they have. But that's none of my business. The Railroad. Honestly, for the longest of times, I considered this to be the best faction. That was until I did the mission Synth Retention, where you have to capture a rogue synth named Gabriel, who is turned into a raider. It was during this mission that I discovered that the Railroad mind wipes their synths and have them forget their previous lives. Why? Why is that thing? I feel like that's an incredibly stupid thing to do. Wouldn't it be better for the synths they liberate to have their memories? Because synth paranoia is a real thing. There are many examples of that throughout the game, like during the first time we arrive in Diamond City, during the quest Human Error over in Covenant, and with the Brotherhood regarding Dance. So wouldn't it be better to have synths who know that they are a synth so that they could possibly avoid situations in areas where they could get lynched for being a synth? Not to mention, this also showcases a flaw with the Railroad's goal. That being that they are so eager to rescue synths from the big bad institute that enslaves them, and the Brotherhood who wants to exterminate them, that they don't really care what the rescued synths end up doing after they are given their freedom. Now, I don't believe that the Railroad implanted memories into Gabriel, making him believe that he was a raider the whole time. But I do believe that they should have followed up on him to make sure things were going well. And him becoming a raider leader and commanding one of the biggest raider camps in the Commonwealth, that is the Railroad's fault. Every action that Gabriel did after being rescued, that blood is on the Railroad's hands. because they didn't take the time to ensure nothing like that could happen. It's either they didn't know that was going to happen, or they just didn't care. I would be willing to forgive them if they looked at this and they were like, oh, this is a problem. We need to fix this. But they don't. And it's actions like that which makes the railroad come off as irresponsible. And not to mention, compared to the other factions, you get the least rewards for doing their quests. For example, the Institute gives you access to the teleporter and offers synth relay grenades. The Brotherhood gives you power armor, vertibird access, and exposes us to the sheer awesomeness to Liberty Prime. Hell, even the Minutemen gives you the ability to use mortars. What does the Railroad give you? The only thing I can think of is the Railway Rifle, but you can find those throughout the game. It's not Railroad exclusive. Hell, most of the members of the Railroad are unlikable, the only exceptions being Deacon and Glory. Not to mention, they have the worst hideout compared to the other factions, let's be real. Then finally, we get to the Minutemen. I do not hate the Minutemen. I think they have a noble cause, going around helping the people of the Commonwealth. The big issue with the Minutemen as a whole that every player can agree with is pertaining to one certain person. You know who I'm talking about. Can't talk about the Minutemen without saying his name. Now allow me to introduce to you the man, the myth, the meme. Preston, another settlement needs your help, Garvey. Take it away, Preston.
Another settlement has sent word that they need our help. Here's where they are. I hope you can help them. We've got to show people they can count on the Minutemen again.
Now, a lot of people don't like Preston. Why? He keeps having you go from settlement to settlement, helping people with their problems nonstop in a continuous radiant quest loop. Or the fact that after encountering the sole survivor, Preston will anoint you as the general of the Minutemen almost instantly, even though the Minutemen at that point in time just consist of him, and yet he still orders you to go around helping settlements while he just gets to lounge around in Sanctuary Hills the whole time. I don't think Preston is a bad person and has really good intentions, but the thing that rubs people the wrong way is his moral superiority, where he just goes, I like doing good deeds. You should do good deeds too. I want you to do a good deed. You did a good deed. That's good. Here, do another one. And the moment you say no to him, he gets so pissy about it. What do you mean you don't want to do a good deed? There's nothing more important than doing a good deed. Are you not a good person? Do the good deed, General. I swear, his entire character revolves around the Minutemen and helping settlements. Honestly, I can understand why people don't want anything to do with him, which is why I literally sent him to the bottom of the world, that being Murkwater construction site. Have fun with the Mirror, Queen Preston. Now, when it comes to the Minutemen themselves, they don't really have much importance to the synth storyline as the other three factions, which makes them feel out of place having them contribute in any way. Yes, they don't like the Institute, but everyone dislikes the Institute. I guess what I'm saying is that they don't have much of a dog in this fight. All the missions you do for them is to rebuild the Minutemen, not for the main story. The only reason they can get involved is because the sole survivor is the general. The Minutemen are low tier compared to the importance of the other three groups, and their ending is the least likely to happen. In a logistical sense, do you truly believe that the Minutemen could take out the Brotherhood or the Institute? The Railroad? Maybe, but that's because they are a secret group who relies on stealth, not brute force. It's like saying that the Companions can defeat the Thieves Guild in a fight in Skyrim. They are not comparable in that regard. While for the other factions, I can believe that they can take each other out. The Brotherhood destroying the Institute with Liberty Prime and storming Railroad HQ, shooting the whole place up? Believable. The Railroad hijacking a vertibird and placing a bomb on the Prudwin and organizing a synth uprising inside the Institute? Believable. The Institute hacking Liberty Prime to blow up the Prudwin and marching into Railroad HQ, shooting the place up? Believable. The Minutemen destroying the Prudwin with mortars and storming the Institute? Not believable. The Minutemen are nothing more than Boy Scouts. They don't hold a candle to the full force of both the Brotherhood or the Institute. All in all, the factions suck. I don't like any of them. They can all die in a hole. When it comes to the world that Fallout 4 takes place in, my thoughts upon traveling it is My god, this place is dull. Now, I want to make one thing extremely clear. I am only going to be talking about the Commonwealth. Far Harbor and Nuka World are excluded from this because I never played either of those DLCs. Meaning, I don't know how they are comparatively to the Commonwealth. For all I know, they could probably be better locations. They could be worse. So I am only focusing on the base game. I just want to make that clear. Now, what is it about the Commonwealth I don't like, which makes it feel dull? For me, the world is boring and lifeless. Now, that given the fact that this takes place in a post-nuclear apocalypse, the world is gonna look rough, lifeless, and bleak. No, that makes sense, and I don't have an issue with that. For me, it's how all samey it looks. A lot of the environments you pass look more or less the same, like there are no big differences between two places. Like the only environmental locations that seem more different compared to the others would be the glowing sea, and maybe the wreckage of downtown Boston. Those are the only ones that stand out. Like, what makes the northern part of the map different from the southern? Like, there are no big diverse locations. Compare this to Skyrim, in which you have great big forests, mountains, plains, and tundras, which makes each region stand out more. I guess that's why they added in places like Far Harbor and Nuka World, but that's besides the point. Another thing in which I think contributes to a less engaging world is the lack of civilization. All you really have for civilizations, such as cities and towns, would be Diamond City and Good Neighbor. Now, both of those places are fine, but I just wish there was more. Like add in another big town or two to flesh out the Commonwealth. Sure, you could say places like Covenant and Bunker Hill exist, but they aren't really the same compared to Diamond City. Besides, it's not like those places have anything of worth. They're just places on a map. They're just barely above the settlements that you help build up, and trust me, I will get to them in a minute. Not to mention, depending on the choice you make in the quest Human Error, you could end up killing everyone in Covenant, making the place even more useless. Now, if you want to make the argument and say that we don't need any big cities in the Commonwealth for whatever reason, all I will say is that is fine. But can we make Diamond City and Good Neighbor bigger? I want them livelier, since these are the biggest civilizations in the game. Everyone and their mother should be trying to make their way to these places, since it would be better to live there than in the wasteland itself. Add in more shops, more NPCs. Heck, let us be able to buy property in Good Neighbor like we can in Diamond City. I feel like if we aren't going to be given more cities to explore, then the cities we have should be expanded upon. Now, some people will say, Faceless, if you want another city in the game, you can make one with the workbench and turn any settlement into a city. Technically, that is true, but that's not the same and you know that. Besides, most of the settlements you can acquire suck. Let's be honest, no one's going to be making Hangman's Alley, Outpost Zimbanja, Murkwater construction site as the place that they're going to establish as their ideal town, headquarters, base, whatever you want to call it, at that location. Not to mention, do we really need so many places to establish settlements? To be honest, I don't see anyone wanting to put in all that work in making all these settlements into locations that are somewhat worth a damn. I would argue 2. Maybe 3 places are worth the effort, and that would be Sanctuary Hills, the player home in Diamond City, and the location that you use to build a teleporter relay for your chosen faction. That would be it, which is a shame because I think there are a small amount of these settlement locations that are somewhat cool. For example, Spectacle Island. I would argue that this is one of the coolest locations to get to build a settlement. The issue with it is that there's no reason to really go there. I never got a quest to go investigate that place. No one ever told me about this location. I was just roaming around the map, turned my head, looked, and saw an island in the distance, and thought, can I go there? And that is how I came across Spectacle Island. Upon first finding that workbench and gaining it as a settlement, I was excited at first. Then it transitioned to, what now? I don't really do much with the other settlements to begin with, so what am I going to do with this one in particular? I invested much of my time and resources with working on Sanctuary Hills and turning that into a decent place to live. Do I really want to go through all of that again? For me, that is a no. I just wish that there was more to the world itself. For me, it was underwhelming. It is possibly the biggest reason as to why I can't remember much of the world of Fallout 4 that takes place in. In other words, the Commonwealth is kind of forgettable. Normally, when I make a video talking about a topic in a critical manner, I always make it to where I talk about the things it does right, or the things that I enjoyed about it, because I believe no matter how bad something may be, there is always going to be at least one good thing about it. When I talk about the good, I usually keep it brief, a couple sentences at most before moving on to the main event, let's say. In the case of Fallout 4, there is a large number of things that I like, that I think does well, so much so that I am dedicating an entire section to what it does right. Now, what do I want to talk about? I could talk about the gameplay and how I love it. That is awesome and is one of my favorite things in this game. I could go into detail about the crafting system and how I think it's one of the better systems I came across, and how it honestly encourages you to collect junk to try and salvage parts to build and upgrade items. But I believe there are 3 things that I truly want to highlight, as I consider these the things I like the most, and would say that these are the 3 aspects in which Fallout 4 actually beats Skyrim in. Why am I bringing up Skyrim? Because both are made by the same company, and I like to compare and contrast the two. Number 1 would be how they do companions. I think most of the followers you can get are significantly more engaging and have so much personality to them, which surpass 95% of the followers in Skyrim. Sure, Fallout 4 doesn't have as many followers as Skyrim does, with Fallout 4 having like 14 and Skyrim having a whopping 58 followers. Yeah, that's a big gap. The big difference between the two is that more care went to crafting those Fallout characters. Each one of them has a story to them, and you learn more about them the longer you're traveling with them. For some companions, you can do a special quest for them, like curing Kate of her chem addiction, helping McCready find a cure for his son's illness, or helping Nick Valentine with a personal case, just to name a few. And if you increase their affinity to the max level by doing and saying the things that they like, you gain a special perk, which depending on the perk can be quite beneficial. Now, some companions are better than others, and I'm not going to get into who are the best and who are the worst. That's a topic for another day, but the followers are a good addition. Number 2 would be how they do their level up system, particularly special stats. The big thing I like about special would be how each stat, strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, and luck all have their uses. Like, regardless of what type of class you choose, I feel like that investing a few points into certain stats could be helpful. Strength is good for melee damage and carrying capacity. Perception is good for VATs. Endurance is good for health. Charisma for passing speech checks. Intelligence increases the amount of XP gained. Agility affects your stamina, and luck affects your chances of getting a critical hit. All of which have their uses. I also like how when you level up, you can upgrade the stats themselves or choose to get a perk. Speaking of leveling up, I like how it does it better than Skyrim because you gain XP based on the actions you do, and it's not dependent on increasing your skills, which makes it easier to gain levels, and after a certain point you don't feel like you're hitting a stagnation with your levels, at least in my opinion. Number 3, I like the dungeons. Now, this may come off as contradictory since it wasn't that long ago that I said the world of Fallout 4 was boring. I still stand by that. However, I would argue that the dungeons in the game kind of make up for that to an extent. A lot of the places in this game where you can go inside and explore are unique from one another and doesn't get boring, ranging from rundown apartments to stores full of supplies, abandoned factories, other vaults that went through their own issues, etc., etc., etc. Because let's be honest, in Skyrim, a lot of the dungeons you can explore get repetitive after a little bit. It's the same old crypt with the same old Draugr. Yes, I know there are other places to explore like Dwarven Ruins, but the same thing applies to that too. Once you explore one of them, you kind of explore all of them. You know what I mean? Sure, 1 or 2 things might have something a little different, but it's still the same formula, which is why I like Fallout 4's dungeons. There's usually a lot more going on with them, like finding salvage, reading old logs and terminals. Stuff like that goes a long way in making exploring that much more fun, because this game can be fun, and there are things you can enjoy. I don't think Fallout 4 is a bad game. I just think it was not as good as it could have been, and that is a shame. Which is why I never felt the desire to get any of the DLCs for it. I mean, why would I? I did not get that invested with it to begin with. Having to play a game where I could care less for the story, working alongside people who I don't want anything to do with while traveling a world that is hardly memorable. Yeah, this game was kinda disappointing. It took me over a year and a half to finish. It's not like I was busy with other things. I was playing other games. I just didn't feel that invested in playing this one. Though, there is a silver lining here, and that would be that I have an appreciation for the Fallout series. As I said in the beginning, this was the first ever Fallout game that I ever played. Shortcomings aside, I kinda liked it. If Bethesda ever decided to remaster Fallout 3 or New Vegas, I would want to get to see how it is. Heck, I even have a friend who is a big Fallout fan make a Fallout-inspired Pathfinder campaign, and I greatly enjoyed it. Fallout 4 is one of those titles that is going to be forgotten, as it is not the best Fallout game, not even close. It's not even the worst Fallout game, not even close. For me, it was middle of the road, a 6 out of 10. Well, that's my 2 cents anyways. Now tell me, did you like Fallout 4? Do you agree with my critiques? What faction did you ended up siding with? Tell me in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe. Until next time, I will catch you all on the flip side.